Hello, 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 hello. Let me see. Is this working okay? The fuck? Hello, hello, hello. Is that okay? Oh, I may have it. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
That seems fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we're doing a little early today, but I just felt, I was feeling it and I decided I would do it. This is kind of the Uncle Game Boy show. I'm just trying to see what's going on here. And I have a wired connection for my internet, so that should make it a little more acceptable. And just gonna play some video and read a book. I figure that from what I can tell from watching Twitch, the brain death of the society that I occupy is very apparent because fucking there's just a lot of dumb shit going on there. I'm sorry. I've only been trying to check what the fuck is going on Twitch for like a fucking week. But I'm just truly baffled and dismayed by it. It really breaks my heart to see what people are doing and what they're spending their time on there and anything and everything or anything even. But the reason this is called Uncle Game Boy is getting culture, and you can too, is because I'm gonna do a smart guy thing on Twitch. I'm gonna do something that's gonna enrich your brain, not kill your brain. All right, like just trying to see what's going on Twitch for like even just a week. I feel significantly diminished in my mental capacity. I find myself being at a loss for words often, and I can only imagine what it's doing to you poor folks if you're on here, as long as you seem to be. So, with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to read a dang book. And what book is that? It's a book called The Histories by Herodotus, the first historian. It's a very hard book to read. I have read it before. That's why I'm comfortable doing this. But just trying to kind of enrich your ass and see if the main thing I'm trying to do is see if my video stuff works a little better for when I do my show later on where we watch funny. Well, it's funny, but I try to make fun of it. David Cassidy TV shows and Celebrity Jeopardy and other things sure to come soon. I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck the Uncle Game Boy show is right now. But for now, I'm just going to play this fucking thing and read you some Herodotus. It's the landmark Herodotus, The Histories, edited by Robert B. Stadler, a new translation by Andrea L. Purvis, introduction by Rosalind Thomas, the most densely annotated, richly illustrated, and user-friendly edition of the Histories ever to appear. Oh, I forgot to share my screen. Come on. There we go. There we go. Give you a little flavor of. Come on, show it. There we go. Okay. A little flavor. Just kind of get you in the right headspace. Make you think about all the things I'm reading about. But you're ready to get your ass enriched. Learn a little thing or two. Here we go. This is The Histories by Herodotus, the first history book ever made. And there's this handsome mug there. Look at that punum. Look at that punum. Any handsome gent? Did anyone look good in ancient Greece? I can't tell. They say you watch Cleopatra and it's freaking Elizabeth Taylor on there, and then you see like a freaking coin of what Cleopatra was supposedly looked like. Which here's a fun fact. For a lot of these ancient guys, like a coin is probably the best we have to go on of what they might have actually looked like because they were often minted, during the early stages of their reign. It was like, we got a new fucking emperor. We got to do a new pressing of coins to indicate that this is the guy who is guaranteeing the money or whatever. And a lot of times when you have like a statue of like Augustus or Tiberius or Nero or something like that, they're often made like well after they were dead or they are very highly idealized. They're often not like as reliable as coins. Point being, if you look at Cleopatra's coins and you try to square that with the notion that she was like the most beautiful woman on earth, it's kind of hard to understand, But she was a smart chick. She was a smart chick. We're not talking about Cleopatra. That's much, much later on from what we're talking about. This is like 400 BC, 500 BC around. Let's start with the introduction by Rosalind Thomas. Herodotus' histories trace the conflict between the Greeks and the Persians, which culminated in the Persian Wars and the great battles of Thermopylae, Salamis, Plataea, I can't talk very well. One might say maybe you shouldn't try to read a very difficult book um, in front of people live uh, if you can't talk. But that's a very unkind, and I'd even go as far to say bigoted thing to say of you if you are thinking that or saying that. So yeah. Herodotus' histories trace the conflict between the Greeks and the Persians, which culminated in the Persian Wars and the Greek battles of Thermopylae, Salamis, Plataea, and Mycale, I think, from 480 BC through 479. Wait, no, that's no, it was much longer than that. I think that's what is that? Maybe I should have figured out what's going on here first. Shit. You know what? We're just going to have to, like, kind of forgo that for right now. Oh, no, maybe that is the year. It says, okay, all dates. Yeah, okay, here we go. It's been a while since I've read a book like this, and I already lost the one viewer we had, and that's cool. Thank you for sticking around as long as you did, I guess. All dates in this edition of Herodotus and in the supporting materials are BCE, before the Common Era, unless otherwise applied. So yeah, that's not when the whole war happened. That's just when the battles happened that they were referencing. A generation or so before he was writing, he described his theme as compromising both the achievements of Greeks and barbarians and also the reasons why they came into conflict. And this suggests that he sought the causes of the conflict and factors that took one back deep into the past and into the characteristics of each society. He implies that he saw the deep-seated causes and cultural antagonism of Greek and non-Greek, but he went out of his way to describe the achievements and customs of many non-Greek peoples with astonishing sensitivity and lack of prejudice. The histories are the first work in the Western tradition that are recognizably a work of history to our eyes, for they cover the recent human past as opposed to a concentration of myths and legends. They search for causes, and they are critical of different accounts. Herodotus' own description of them as an inquiry, history, in quotes, has given us our word history, and he has been acknowledged as the quote-unquote father of history. He also has a claim to be the first to write a major work on geography and ethnography. His interests were omnivorous, from natural history to anthropology, from early legend to the events of the recent past. He was interested in the nature of the Greek defense against the Persians, or the nature of Greek liberty, as well as in stranger and more exotic tales about gold-digging ants or other wondrous animals in the East. The histories are the first long work in prose rather than verse, which might rival the Homeric epics in scale of conception and length. Shorter works in prose had appeared before, but the histories must in their time have been revolutionary. Who then was Herodotus? As with most ancient Greek authors, we have little reliable information, and the later ancient biographers may have invented biographical quote-unquote facts by drawing from the content of the histories themselves, as was common in ancient biographies of writers. He was born in Halicarnassus in Asia Minor, which is like Turkey, I think. Now modern Bodrum in Western Turkey. Yeah, okay. He spent much of his life in exile, spending some time in Samos, some in Athens, and apparently ending up in Thurii, the Athenian Pan-Hellenic colony founded in South Italy. Aristotle in the 4th century knew him as Herodotus of Thurii. The histories themselves provide the evidence for his extensive travels in the Greek world, Asia Minor, Phoenicia, Egypt, and North Africa, and perhaps the Black Sea. These are just battle reference. Okay, unlike in modern travelogues, the main focus of interest is not on the traveling itself, but on the information it yields. So again, the personal elements are not extensive. His life spanned much of the 5th century. There is no reason to doubt the ancient tradition that he was born at roughly the time of the Persian Wars, 480 to 479, and probably lived into the 420s, since the histories make reference to events in Greece early in the Peloponnesian War of 431 through 404. It is usually thought that he was active as researcher and writer from the 450s to the 420s. The histories clearly constituted a life's work. As historical background, the beginning of this period saw the triumph of the Greek mainland states over the might of the Persian Empire, first in the initial invasion of 490 in the Battle of Marathon, then in the second invasion of 480/479 with the battles of Thermopylae, Salamis, Plataea, and finally Mycale in Asia Minor. So was the war only a couple of... I thought it was like a pretty extensive thing that took... I mean, I've read this fucking book. That's what I remember, is that they fucking, Persians make incursions, and they fucking get repelled by the Greeks. They come back. I thought it took more than a year. I don't know. We'll see. The unexpected victory resonated in Greek consciousness through the 5th century and indeed beyond, and it is important to recall this when reading Herodotus, who was researching a generation or two after the Greek victory. It helped crystallize Greeks' attitudes to their own way of life and values, intensified their supreme distrust of monarchy and tyranny, and shaped their attitude to the Persians. In more practical terms, Athens' naval success in the Persian Wars and its enterprise immediately after led to the creation of the Athenian Empire, which started as an anti-Persian league and lasted for almost 3/4 of a century, from 479 through 404 BCE. As the Spartans were increasingly reluctant to continue anti-Persian activity into the Hellespont and Asia Minor, the Athenians were free to create their maritime league composed of many smaller Greek states situated around the Aegean and up to the Hellespont. Athenian power grew steadily, and Athens even tried a disastrous expedition to help Egypt rebel against the Persian king. As her radical democracy developed from the 460s, conflict arose between her and the other powerful Greek states. This eventually became the Peloponnesian War. Particularly Corinth and Sparta and the members of Sparta's Peloponnesian League. By the late 430s, tensions had reached their height. War broke out in 431 between Athens and her allies and Sparta and hers. Athens was now a quote-unquote tyrant city. The Corinthians claimed. Thucydides, and it's just referencing Thucydides wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, and Greece must now be freed from Athens. Greece had been freed from the Persians only to be enslaved by Athens. The great historian of this later work, Thucydides, was successor and rival to Herodotus, and he makes his Athenian speakers remark on the opening book of his history. They are wary of pointing out that the Athenian Empire is justified on the grounds that the Athenians did most to defeat the Persians. In other words, the Persian Wars were still very much a living part of Greek politics in the 430s and 420s, in the period during which Herodotus was researching. They played an important role in the rhetoric and diplomacy of the time. Athens could and did claim that she had done more than any other Greek city to help Greece keep her freedom. Sparta and Corinth now asserted that Athens herself was enslaving Greece. Freedom is central to Herodotus' histories, and it played a crucial part in interstate political argument and antagonism in the later 5th century. Herodotus' histories need to be seen in part against this background, even though in formal terms they describe events only down to the end of the Persian Wars in 479. For he takes as his explicit theme the conflict between the Greeks and the barbarians, as he puts it in the introduction, and after tracing this conflict back to the earliest times, he gradually works up the full narrative of the Greek-Persian conflict in the Ionian Revolt of 499 through 494, and to the 2 Persian invasions of mainland Greece of 490 and 480. Herodotus' histories stop on the brink of the creation of the Athenian Empire. They end their main narrative at the point where the Greeks in Asia Minor, helped by the Greek fleet under the Spartan Leotychidas, I think, have won a decisive victory against the Persian forces at Mycala in Asia Minor. On the very same day in which the Greek army in central Greece under Pausanias had won the victory at Plataea, which forced the Persians to withdraw entirely from Greece. The Asia Minor Greeks were taken into the anti-Persian alliance of the Greek allies, and the victorious Greek forces sailed up to the Hellespont to continue aggressive operations against Persia and free more Greek cities. The Spartans and the Peloponnesians went home, fatally leaving the Athenians in charge, though they were to send another commander out later, and Herodotus' narrative ends with the Athenian actions in the Hellespont, which many scholars have seen as the ominous portent of the future, right? If we imagine Herodotus trying to collect accounts, to take oral testimony, and to gather personal or collective memories about the Persian Wars, then we can assume that he would have been talking to people who had actually been involved, who perhaps had fought in the war or whose relations had done so. And since the effect of the Persian Wars were still immediate and strong, the charges of Medism, those Greeks who accepted Persian rule and fought with the Persians were accused of quote-unquote Medism by those Greeks who fought against the Persians. They were said to have Medized, quote-unquote, as an extension of the Greek habit of using the word Mede, quote-unquote, and Persian, quote-unquote, interchangeably. Mede. Yeah, Mede. Yeah, I remember that now. Although the Medes were, not Mede, I think it's Medes. Although the Medes were a people quite distinct from the Persians. You know, that's one thing that you have to kind of like really get used to with reading these types of books, is that there's a lot of like inference of terminology that means the same thing. Like, for instance, like, you know, the Spark, we are more familiar with the, right, okay, good, unrealistic courthouse, awesome. I was like, good. I was like, who was watching this fucking shit? And like, of course it's a bot. That makes me comfortable. I was kind of worried for a second that someone was watching my YouTube. From like, I actually have like a couple subscribers on YouTube, and vehement supporters, I'll have you know, okay? And I thought that, you know, I was finally get this to fucking go to my YouTube channel. And I thought maybe, just maybe, that one of them were watching it, and then we're like, oh, this fucking shit sucks. Which, I mean, I'm just mostly testing things out. And I think it's working pretty good. Like, so far, I haven't seen the fucking feed hicking up or anything like that. It looks good. So I think this wired connection is working on. That was the main thing I wanted to do anyway. You know, I figured I might just educate your ass a little bit while I'm doing it. You know, as a considerate act on my part. You know, but I don't expect anyone to enjoy it. You know, because it's actually informative, and you know, it's occasionally, dare I say, entertaining and funny. And, you know, nothing else on Twitter are very, the people that I'll just say this real quick. The people I see on Twitch that I like, I'm like, I can never do that. Those people are way funnier than me. They have way more ideas than I do. I can never ever do that. Or there are people doing shit where I'm like, this shit fucking sucks. I don't even know how this is even a fucking show that, or anything that gets any kind of attention at all. I don't know why anybody on earth would watch this. It's just those two things. It's like, this is absolutely, positively fruity tooty out of my fucking wheelhouse, out of my capability, or it's the worst shit I've ever seen on earth. But all I can say is I don't think I get it. Maybe I shouldn't be fucking doing it. I mean, as evidenced by this, I'm the only one watching my fucking thing, and I think that's going to be the case forever, you know. But you know, I've been meaning to read this book anyway. I've been meaning to read this book again anyway. I got all these fucking books I've been meaning to read. I got fucking The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I got fucking Oliver Twist here. I've got The Greek Myths by Robert Graves. I've read this and that last book before, but I haven't read the other two before. And I'm thinking I'll just read them on here because it fucking gives me fucking reason to fucking do something good with my life, you know. I mean, to be totally honest with you, like, I used to be a much more cultured person. I read a lot more, watch a lot more weird movies and stuff like that. And I was thinking of maybe doing that with this. That's why Uncle Gameboy is getting culture, and you can too. You know, maybe I'll just fucking have my laptop open and watch like some of the weird fucking French movies I'd fucking get from the library or something with my laptop open. I've seen people do that. I've seen people fucking have a feed where it's a camera pointing to their TV watching a movie, and they have, I mean, more viewers than I have. Okay, so it seems like it's acceptable. And you know, I mean, to be totally frank with you, I've seen a fucking channel where they're just playing the fucking Simpsons, and I don't like to comment on, like, I social media is not my thing. I don't really want to talk to any fucking people, if I'm being totally honest. But like, that's not legal, right? You can't just put a fucking Simpsons feed on there, right? Like, doesn't, I mean, I know there's shit on YouTube that is not protected, or more specifically, more importantly, not of interest to the people who have the potential to protect the copyright of some of the material on there. But The Simpsons, I think, is pretty well and thoroughly guarded by the Disney Corporation. Okay, why am I paying them fucking $12 a month or whatever just to watch one fucking show if that's not the case? Okay, it's just fucking fucked up. And then I was like, I contributed a message to this fucking chat room. I was, you know, whatever demented urge causes people like you to fucking do that all the time. And I was just like, is this even something that, like, is this legal? Like, how is this okay with the Disney Corporation? And someone was like, yeah, it's okay with Disney Corporation. It's my dad. I asked my dad, you know, and I was able to, you know, I started loading my gun. I started getting pretty hot and heated about it. I'll admit, I was ready to do something pretty terrible to that guy. All right. But then I, you know, like I often do when I'm thinking of, you know, contributing to a Twitch chat or commenting on a YouTube video or obliterating somebody with a fucking shotgun, I often reconsider my first kind of knee-jerk reaction. And I'm able to kind of pull my foot off of the gas a little bit and say, no, you don't need to get so hot and heavy, buddy. All right, just take it easy. Everything's gonna be fine, right? You're doing you. You're happy. You're healthy, and you're living in God's light. So what else you got to fucking worry about? And it's stuff like this that gives me that fortitude and that integrity of character to not just be a fucking desperate asshole on the internet all the time. And let me tell you, it'd be very easy. It'd be very easy to just give into that urge. I understand where you're coming from. That's why I'm so concerned about these folks, because I am one of you. I very easily could be one of you in the worst possible way, you know, but I'm not. I can pretty confidently, I can't really confidently espouse the values of who I am in any way, you know, like, I mean, that's when I made my description of myself a little more effusive, because it's like, I think at some point you got to fucking tell people a little bit about yourself. And I'm a little reticent to do that, because if anybody asks any of those questions, some of the answers are a little embarrassing. I'm going to be totally honest with you, but I'm going to wait until someone's here to fucking hear me, at least, to start going off about my personal business. But it seems like it's kind of hard. It seems like it's kind of hard to do Twitch without getting your personal business out there. But like, you know, I think it could be fodder for humor potentially. You know, it is almost, you know, some of this shit that's happening to me, you'd almost have to laugh, because what else are you gonna fucking do, you know? But how did we get on this subject? I don't remember. Bitching about Twitch. I could bitch about, I mean, I've been, like I said, I've been fucking trying to figure out this fucking Twitch shit for like 2 minutes, and it is just, it's killing my brain. It's pissing me off. I think I just got to fucking disengage from it, except for like the 2 fucking creators on there that I think are actually good, you know? Well, that was my little diatribe about that. Where was I? Right. If we imagine Herodotus trying to collect accounts, to take oral testimony, and to gather personal or collective memories about the Persian Wars, then we can assume that he would have been talking to people who had actually been involved, or perhaps had fought in the war, or whose relations had done so. And right, medism, that's where we were. Who fought in the war, whose relations had done so. And since the effects of the Persian Wars were still immediate and strong, the charges of medism still potent, it is hard to imagine that his research was either simple or straightforward. His claims to set the record straight and to record both the brave and the cowardly still had resonances for later generations. Plutarch still resented his remarks about certain Greek cities, particularly Corinth and Thebes, several centuries later in the late 1st century CE. In his fascinatingly and curiously petty essay, quote, On the Malice of Herodotus, unquote, where he also tried in his own way, rather ineffectually, to set the record straight. Excuses for why the Argives did not help the Persians. Here's the thing. This is the thing that's like when I was reading this book the first time, I had a copy from the library that I had to check out repeatedly, because it basically took me like 6 months to read this entire book. I was constantly having to look up maps. One thing that is difficult about determining this stuff is that the countries don't have the same names that they do. They're not even countries. Like, the concept of countries does not exist at this point. These are city-states, you know, and they exist within regions. So when we're trying to understand the context of this stuff in the context, if for lack of a better term, of nation states and things like that, it can be very confusing. You can't look at a modern map and figure out what the fuck is going on here, but you also can't look at a map that only has the ancient terminology and the ancient geographical features, etc., on there, because then you won't know what you're looking at. Like, for one thing you might not know is that, like, the rivers and stuff like that literally change. Like, these fucking cities are built on rivers, you know, and even if the histories don't go back that far, recording them, like, Babylon's been there for like thousands of years prior to maybe that might not be true. That might not be true. But take for instance, this is one thing I can say confidently. Like the Great Pyramid was built in like 2500 BCE. That's like fucking like 2000 years before this shit fucking happens, you know. And rivers move. Like the rivers that are around today are not in the same place that they were when this stuff was written. The places are named different. The landmarks are different. The terminology for the peoples is different. All of it you have to be transferring, like, between, like, I was just constantly opening up tabs on my phone and fucking switching between different maps, trying to figure out what the fuck was going on in this, trying to understand what the movements of these battles were and whatnot. It could just occasionally be very confusing. I can tell you that this book is like the best of them. I had this kick. I'm trying to culture myself again, you know, but for a time I was considered to be a very, in addition to be a very gassy gentleman, I was also considered to be someone who had a certain impressive level of self-education. I'd read all these fucking very difficult books that no one wants to read and aren't interested in, but they are very interesting and worth reading. They're just extremely difficult. This is a very hard book to read, but it is entertaining. Getting through some of this can be very hard, but there's so, like, one of the reasons I want to get back to this one is because there's so much fucking shit in here that is insane. Some of the most insane stuff I've ever heard ever happens in this book. Okay, like, people went through some mess back in the day. I'm sure you've heard a whole lot of stuff about the ancient world and how bad it was to live there, right? And you might be right about that stuff. There's some things that you're definitely wrong about, like the whole notion that people only live to be 40. Like, that's a fact that is bandied about all the time, that like the average death was around 40 years old, and that's just not true at all. Once there's one person here to ask me why that's the case, I'd be happy to explain why. Very simple, concise explanation that will very clearly illustrate to you why you're very wrong about thinking that people can only live to be like fucking 40 years old or something past the year 1846. Okay, there was, you know, Caesar was in his 60s. Benjamin Franklin lived to be in his late 80s. Okay, fucking people could live a fucking long time. All right, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because you don't deserve anything less or more than that. You deserve far less than that. But this is all I'm going to be willing to give you for now, until you follow my fucking channel. All right, you give me the biddies, you give me the subscriptions, you give subscriptions in my name, you fight battles in my name, you give away all of your personal possessions in the name of my religion. You do whatever it takes to make Uncle Gameboy the most powerful and influential influencer streaming YouTube internet guy ever. Okay, then you will be privy to the fucking information that will bring the light of truth into your life. Okay, I can't help you otherwise, and I'm unwilling to, more importantly. Okay, because you have to earn it first. Okay, that's something that the ancients knew very well. Okay, you ever heard of a mystery religion? You ever heard of a mystery religion? Of course you fucking haven't, because you're a fucking moron. That's why I'm reading this shit to you. Okay, but like, you know, to get the secret knowledge from the highest masters, you had to earn it. You had to go through certain trials, and you had to display certain capabilities before you would be let into the hallowed halls of the most essential inner workings of the universe. And can you really be so flabbergasted, I guess, at the notion that should be expected of you? Or would you want it to be that way? Would you want would you want your soul to be proven as pure as the highest carat gold you could find, in order to be present before the face and the name and the glory of God? I think so. I think if you didn't do that, you'd be kind of thinking, what even can I even really have faith in this? You know, struggle for it. You got to earn it. All right. And the way you earn it in this sense is to give me money, give me all of your money, hurt yourself to bring me glory. I'm sorry about that. We're going to get back to this. We're at least going to finish the introduction, I promise. And then, oh, how are we? Oh, it's very long. I mean, this is a very long book, and oh my God, it's long. I don't know if it's the whole. Okay, we're gonna read read some more. That's all I'm gonna say for now. We're gonna read more. I see these other one, like, here's my last digression before we get back on track. Like one of the streams I found that's really good is that Dead Blossom Jessica. Like, that guy fucking is hilarious. That guy rules. He's awesome. But like, I can't even begin to understand how somebody can have that level of endurance for this. And now, and one thing I put in my fucking profile is that, ultimate failure, permanently sick. Not an exaggeration. Again, I'll get into it if you earn it. If you build it, they will come. I'm sure you've heard that before, okay? Same applies in this situation. If you build me up, if you give me the money, if you fund the operation, the truth will see the light or whatever, okay? I'm willing to tell you right now is that I'm basically sick all the time forever. But I can get more into it if you patronize me in the way that I clearly deserve. But yeah, I don't know how anyone fucking does that. It's crazy. I can only do this for so long. I'm already. I mean, I've been talking nonstop, and you know, again, without getting into further details, you know, like my air distribution capabilities, if you will, you know, my ability to take in air and effectively distribute oxygen throughout my organ systems and my musculature in my body is diminished, say the least. So I can't do this for that long. I just can't talk for that long. I think I would literally pass out. And that'd be something to see, right? I mean, you know, I've certainly considered abusing myself on here for entertainment or doing exercises for biddies and stuff like that. But first, you have to have any reason to watch. That's one of the things that, like, some of that stuff, I'm like, what? How do you? Okay, I get all the enticement stuff, but how do you get anyone to like be interested in the first place? That I don't really understand. You know, especially based off of what I see other people doing. I'm like, I don't know how anybody ever got on board with this. You know, I mean, let's be frank. I do know how some people get involved because, like, there's a lot of chicks on Twitch, and I don't think it's any fucking accident. You know, you girls do what you got to do. You know, and I have no qualms with you using your feminine wiles or your feminine assets. I no, just get on shaky ground here, but like, you know, fucking, you know, you can take these fucking sad Australian motherfuckers, these sad British motherfuckers that just seem to be legion on Twitch for whatever biddies they're willing to biddy you with. Okay, I'm not gonna fucking give you shit for that. Okay, but I'm not a hot chick. All right, I'm not funny. I'm pretty sure I'm not funny, but I'm definitely sure that I'm not like a reasonably hot chick. Okay, but so I get how that works. But like, I mean, let me just break it down real quick a little bit, okay? Like a lot of, like, for instance, Dead Blossom Jesse, the other the Go Off Kings, fucking Luke, the Luke guy. To a lesser extent, some of their pals, you know, some of the barnyard friends like Libby Watson and stuff like that are fucking, you know, mostly just making fun of crazy freaks on the internet. It's like all these fucking weirdos on there. And one, I don't really have the patience or the time or the resources to be doing that. Although I'll get into maybe I do have the resources actually, but like it seems kind of mean, you know, at the end of the day. Like a lot of these people are just like local commercial people. I get it's funny, you know, like freaks on TikTok and stuff like that. And it's like, but sometimes it's like, this is just like a fucking guy in his house, you know. This is just like me. I don't really feel comfortable fucking making fun of a, you know, I mean, pretty soon their pitchforks gonna be coming from my ass, you know. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that if I ever get any fucking traction on this thing, it would only be as fodder for something like the Murder Brian show or something. Just look at this fucking dipshit. Look at this fucking asshole idiot trying to do what he's fucking doing. Isn't it embarrassing? Isn't it fucking awful? All right. At least I have some fucking self-awareness. All right, to shield me from that. All right, but I don't have any way to get out of that. I can just be like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I fucking suck. What of it? I can just accept it. I can't fucking be good. That's not an option. But like I mean, I gotta be honest with you. The point I was making is that, like, you know, I've been trying to figure out what this Twitch shit is. And I'm just like dicking around on there, scrolling through some shit. You know, looking at low level people a lot because fucking that's what I am. I'm trying to let's understand what it is at that level, you know. So as far as I can tell, nobody is running with the rinky dink operation I have, which is like, I'm in a fucking room that is just my room with the microphone in it and my shitty computer. And that's it. I got a puppet here. I was thinking maybe using the puppet too. I think the popularity of those videos I did on YouTube should make me reconsider that idea a little bit, maybe that I would use the puppet, but the puppet was something I was maybe thinking of doing, but you know, I ain't got any fucking lights behind me or fucking, I don't know. I even know how to do the video element stuff. Some of that stuff looks fun, I'll be honest, but I can't figure out how to do it yet. Or maybe my channel, it's like, you got one person watching you, buddy, and it's you. We're not going to give you emotes or like video suite options or whatever the fuck is going on these other channels or whatever. I have ideas for clips I would use, you know, like I got these fucking Sopranos shorts. I think that's like I'm basically doing that shit already. I'm fucking making an archive, but I digress. But the point I was making, I do go on these tangents, and these tangents branch off into other tangents, and before you know it, we can't even begin to get back to the fucking center of the tree, the trunk of the tree. That's what you call it, because we are so far out on a thin branch that has splintered off multiple times from said trunk that we can't even be, it'd be dangerous to go back. We fucking fall on our ass trying to go back. It's starting to happen. Anyway. So yeah, but some of these motherfuckers you can make fun of, is all I'm saying. And I'm just like, I'm watching it too, so I guess I'm there, but like I'm not watching it for long. I'm watching it just kind of like, what is this? Why would anyone watch this? What am I doing right now? What am I fucking even doing right now? But then you see someone's like actively participating in it, and I just can't even understand that. I don't understand how anybody got on board with anything like that. I mean, if I was just, I'm going to do this later. I was thinking of doing this later, but I was going to play Mass Effect and call Uncle Gameboy Saves the Universe. If I do that, I don't think anyone's going to watch it. I mean, maybe these people have friends and their friends tell other people. I think they might have something to do with it because I do have no friends. And that's not true. I have my parents and I have my cat. Two cats that like me. So Archie likes me okay. So 3. I have 3 cats and 2 humans that like me. Sure, you could say that, 2 of them like me because they're, my parents. And, if they didn't like me, that would be kind of fucked up, And they know that. They're aware of that. Also, my cats, I think they've learned that, what was I going to say? I don't know. All I'm saying is that two of them created me, and the other 2 I guess legally own. I don't know. So, you know what? I was watching The Sopranos the other day, as I frequently do, and you know what Tony said on there? He said to Anthony, his beloved son, who has his own stuff going on, as you well know. He was like, you know what? Friends let you down. Family. Those are the people you can count on. I was like, you know what, Tony? I don't often agree with everything you say. Sometimes the things you do on this show are quite troubling to me, if I'll be honest with you. But I do agree with you in this instance. Fuck friends. Friends are shit. And who's more shit friends than anybody? Friends on the internet, I'll have you know. The people you can count on the least in life are friends on the internet. You can't even count on them to fucking acknowledge your existence in fleshland. It's fucking disgusting. I might have mentioned this before. I'm going to tell my mom about it later, but I don't exist on social media, okay? Because I know that shit ain't real. And I've had enough life experiences to know that I just shouldn't engage with that crap, more or less. But I was looking at a friend's social media the other day, and they told me a story. Not me. This is publicly available on their fucking TikTok, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, obviously, but it's just like I'm not telling tales out of school, and I'm not giving any details, but they went to England because they had a relationship online with somebody, and they went to England to meet them. This person lives in the United States of America, in Florida, where I live, the worst place on earth. So I understand why you want to leave, You hear there's a plane going to Syria. Yeah, I think I'll be on the next one, but that's an insensitive joke to make, but anyway, fucking, they go to England, calling the guy. He ain't picking up. He ain't showing up. He never shows up. And I have never heard of that happening to someone I know. I thought that was like something that happened in a awful movie where the woman gets some sort of redemption and, as recompense for going through such a lethally embarrassing situation. That sounds fucking horrible. It's the worst. Some of the worst. No, it's just awful. It's just awful. I felt so sad. And it's just like, I don't know. I was just thinking, that's the position you put yourself in, putting your whole ass on the internet, seeking companionship online. You put yourself in situations like that where you were made a great fool. You were made a great fool over and over and over again. All right? Don't do it. You hear me? Don't do it. Don't go to England because of some asshole on the internet who told you to go to England. You'll feel foolish. Family. Family. Anyway, we're gonna get through a little bit more of this. I think I might go to like an hour because I do want to do the Uncle Gameboy show later. It's on the schedule. I mean, fucking, we got to do it. I don't think I'm gonna be doing this. Maybe. I mean, it takes up a lot of time, and I can still jaw. You know. One thing was, I think I kind of got off the point, but one thing I was going to say is I don't know how we're going to do, like, the one thing that makes this version of this book much easier to read is this shit. These maps are boss, and they are relevant to the passages that you're reading. They're all throughout the whole book. So it's basically like, this is like, I was doing this on my own when I was reading this for the first time. Just like I had like 100 tabs that were just various maps that I knew to reference. I was like, okay, here's the one that shows Asia Minor. Here's the one that shows the Greek states in a more zoomed in state area. Here shows the relation between the Peloponnesian Peninsula and Asia Minor, so that you can see them in relation. You know, here it shows the North African continent, etc. You know, you can't read this book without learning a fair amount of ancient geography. And I used to know it a lot better, but a lot of this has left my mind. Most of what's stayed in is the story. Some of the specific stories, like the story of Zopyrus. You know, that's a motherfucker. If we ever get to that, that's some shit, man. The story of Zopyrus is fucking nuts. Fucking nuts. Like one of the craziest fucking things I've ever heard in my entire existence, or will ever hear ever. There's no way. Like, shit like this just does not happen anymore. And here's the thing, like, some of this stuff is a little specious, you know, like he talks about, like, Herodotus was like a real fucking guy, you know, and he fucking tried to do his work. He was the first fucking real, like, scientist of this shit ever, trying to, like, scrutinize it for verifiability and stuff like that. There's stuff in here that's clearly, like, mythology. Like, I don't think that the Egyptians had a hoard of gold that they acquired by training ants to dig it out of the desert, like this says. I don't think there's men with dog bodies in Africa, you know, but like, but a lot of it is fucking just human beings doing the most depraved, sick shit you can imagine doing to each other for revenge, to give influence, to have influence on people, to you know, put people in corners, etc. Like, I mean, if you fucking hate your boss, this is one little tale I'll tell you real quick. That I forget the specific names. What's up, baby? Hey, you okay, Bubba? I'm almost done, sweet. I'm just gonna do this for a few minutes. Let me tell this story real quick to nobody. Here's a story from ancient history. I don't remember the specific names. It was like a guy and another guy, like a tyrant and a fucking guy. You know, I forget. It might have been a Persian king, might have been a Greek guy. I don't remember. But he has him over for dinner, right? And he's like, they'd had some shit happen where he had. He done some shit where he like fucked up, or gosh, I can't remember the specific details. The main thing is that he fucked up, and he thought he was gonna get like fucking murdered or something like that for it, like you do when you fuck up in the ancient world. And his leader guy, his general, or whatever, fucking brought him over for dinner. He's like, okay, I guess things are okay. I guess maybe he got over it or whatever. He certainly wouldn't be inviting me to his fucking personal chambers if he was so fucking mad at me, right? So they're eating dinner, they're having a nice conversation, whatever. And then the other guy's like, so you enjoying your food? You enjoying your food? You like how it tastes? And he's like, oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, you got any more? He's like, oh, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, I have plenty more. Garçon, if you don't mind, bring over the rest of the meat, if you don't mind. And he does. And he brings over a plate that's covered. And in a very dramatic fashion, he opens the covering, and what does he reveal? The rest of the meal. The other guy, let me be clear, his son's hands and head. You've been eating your son the entire time. You've been eating your son the entire time. I got your ass, motherfucker. You thought I didn't know what you did. I know what you did, and you've been eating your son the entire time. How do you feel now, motherfucker? I made you eat your son. You ate your son. And that was when he knew that he had been truly bested. Believe it or not, he continued working for that guy after that. He didn't just scramble over the table and try to rip out his throat with his teeth. No. He knew he had been had. He knew that, nothing he could, this was just like, it's like, this is worse than killing you. This is showing the absolute dominance I have over you. You don't want to know what I can do to your life. You think all I can do is end it? You think all I can do is torture you? Which some of the stuff in here, some of the torture / execution methods that these people came up with. It's, again, I'm sure you've heard of the Inquisition. I'm sure you've heard of some medieval stuff. This stuff takes the cake. There is some nasty, nasty, nasty moves in here that we'll get to later on. But point being, that guy kept working for him after that. He continued to be, I think he was a general, and the other guy was like, his tyrant or whatever, and his leader of some sort, king. Maybe he was a king, but like fucking, he kept working for him after that. He was loyal to him after that, for sure. I think it was because it might have been some sort of like embarrassing loss or something like that, but he fucking didn't let that shit happen again, I think he had more kids, he's like, this can continue if you wish, sir, if you want to continue to err in the way that you will, the fucking, the fuck of it then won't be fucking brutally murdering you, slowly, painfully murdering you. It will be making you slowly, painfully continue to live. It's like fucking Frankenstein's monster. It's like, bitch, you don't get to die. You get to suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer forever until you die or kill yourself. Motherfucker. These people were motherfuckers, man. Oof. You don't even know. We would do so bad back then. We would do so bad back then. Me, I can't even tell you. I couldn't handle this shit. I mean, maybe I'd be fucking a little bit of a different guy if I'd been raised in this crap. If I was raised in a society where it was normal to fucking murder a child up into the age of 6 as a means of abortion. That is not an exaggeration, all right? Maybe that should give you a clue as to why fucking people didn't live so long, It's to do with averages. It's not about individuals in that sense. But again, I'm going to explain that to you if you earn it. If you pay me money, I'll tell you the story. I'll educate your ass so that you won't sound so fucking stupid. And when you hear somebody say, oh, did you know that the ancient days they only lived to be like 40 years old? You're like, actually, that's an incorrect statistic, okay? It's not an incorrect statistic, but it is a misunderstood statistic, okay? If you understood the information behind that aggregation of data, you would know what you're saying is very, very blatantly and obviously wrong. And you would understand that you sound like a great fool right now. Anyway, let's get back to Herodotus, if you don't mind. Those were maps. That's how all that started. I was talking about the maps in the book. And that's how all that started. I'm sorry. I can really go off on one, as you can see. I can't talk well, but I can talk a lot. I can talk a whole damn lot. All right. Excuses for the Argives do not help the Persians. Were still important in the later 5th century and beyond. In fact, Herodotus knows well that he is often controversial. For instance, he notes that he is saying something unpopular and declaring that the Athenians in fact did most to defeat the Persians. Modern historians would usually accept this opinion, so why was it so unpopular at the time? Well, because the Athenians were becoming a brutal empire. Presumably, the prevailing view in Greece was that the Spartans were the great heroes of the war, and thus he was challenging that. Even more important, the Athenians were using precisely this boast to justify their empire. Exactly. Yeah. I was like, that's more important, and he's right. Like, this is one thing that I'll say real quick. This is maybe a fun thing that you can tell people also, but that like the Spartans, they're understood to be one of the most effective fighting forces that's ever existed. And that is true, but their capabilities are a little overblown, I think, by modern understandings. Like they weren't this undefeatable force, and they weren't people that were like, like there were chinks in their armor, and they had noticeable vulnerabilities, particularly that they basically couldn't function anywhere but on land, and a huge part of how the Peloponnesian War and the fucking Greco-Persian wars were fought was on water. That's why the Athenians have such a huge outsized influence on us, because they are motherfuckers on the ocean. But the Spartans, like there's a lot of times where they've just been undone strategically by the fact that they can't fucking do anything except on land. And a huge part of their their intimidation factor was just that it was intimidation. Like they had a rep, and they built up a rep, and they were able to maintain that rep. But a lot of times they were able to coast on that rep, and sometimes if they were put to the test, they weren't such the undeniable fighting force that they had been advertised as, or they weren't reliable. They were very particular in certain ways that were hard to square with or hard to work around and whatnot. They're very frustrating people. When you think of the Spartans and you think of people today that associate themselves with the Spartans, I'm often like, do you really know a lot about these people? Because they kind of sucked. Like if you have to back anybody in the ancient Greek states, Sparta is not the one to really like say, these are the cool guys that I like and I want to be like, and I'm gonna like put a decal of some fucking stencil of a Spartan helmet on my fucking car. Like I'm a Spartan. Like, Spartans were sucked. Their entire society was predicated on vicious slavery, more so than the rest of the ancient world. They had an entire segment of their population that was dedicated to be fucking slaves, called the Helots. And they here's one thing I'll say real quick. I know we're digressing. I said I was going to read more, and the clock is ticking. I understand, but I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that slavery was a very significant part of the ancient world. Like it wouldn't function without slavery. There's a lot of misconceptions about how exactly that worked. A lot of people think that the pyramids were built by slaves. There's a lot of evidence today to suggest that they weren't. They were actually like paid workers. That were like contracted in a sense, but often that was the case. Much of Rome was built by slaves. Much of the ancient Greek states were built by slaves. They were certainly mined by slaves, and being a miner in that time, like, is basically the worst fucking life you can imagine. It was a death sentence, and a painful, like, a cruel, painful death was basically your only reward for being a slave that was confined to the mines. There's much better situations you could be in than that, but the Spartans were the only people, like the slaves that people had were generally the result of conquests of war or something of that nature. There weren't people that were designated slaves just by virtue of the nature of their existence, that they were like, they're the people of this place, therefore we enslave them. That's not how it worked. People could become slaves due to their circumstances, and they could become freed due to their circumstances. There's various, God, why does it keep saying that? There's various circumstances throughout history where people were, enslaved, brought out of slavery, re-enslaved sometimes, things like that. Like Croesus is one of my favorite characters, and this is a great example of someone who was a king and then became a slave. Like that was not something, and the reverse could happen. That was not always like, it's just how things worked in that way. It was funny, but the Spartans were the only, as far as I know, the only Greek state that had a dedicated class of slave people. It's like these people, they are born into slavery. They die in slavery. They are always slaves. These people are our slave class, and we exploit them. And the Helots, I'm sure you could the reason I'm saying that is because it's the only form of slavery that existed in the ancient world, as far as I know, that has any sort of comparability to the slavery that existed in the country that I live, America, for 400 years. Of black people. Like it's like they were, by the virtue of their birth, because of their ethnicity, they were slaves. They were inherently slaves. Nothing else was really going on like that in the ancient world except in Sparta. Sparta is the only state that has a slavery practice that is, I feel strange saying this, but that is unjustifiable and is cruel and is dehumanizing, I think, as the American one was. Like, I'm not going to get too serious here, but I do think that the American practice of slavery, if you study these things, is undeniably one of the worst things that has ever happened in the history of humanity. Like, it's up there. It's very, it's hard to argue that it is not the worst. And I'm talking about a history that spans the course of at least 10,000 years. I'm not talking about American history. I'm talking about all of history, including the stuff that happens in this book. And this book contains some of the most cruel, insane, disgusting, and depraved things I've ever heard of. And I still think the American practice of slavery is almost undeniably worse than that, the Spartans were the people that had the closest thing approaching something that I think looks like American slavery. And that's, I just wanted to say that because I think it's interesting. And I think people misunderstand the Spartans a lot, and they think like they're my guys. And it's like, you need to learn a little bit more about the Spartans if you think they're your guys, because they're not your guys, especially if you're an American. Especially if you're an American and you value freedom and democracy, the Athenians are your guys. They weren't perfect. All this stuff about them fucking making an unjustified empire that was built on specious claims of justifiable warfare are very true. You know, there's a reason that the Peloponnesian War happened, but the Spartans sucked. The Spartans fucking sucked. And if you were someone who values freedom and democracy, the Spartans are the opposite of those guys. They were enslavers. They were kings. They were nobles. You know, they were haughty, up-jumped, violent asshole freaks. The Spartans suck. The Spartans fucking suck. Fuck the Spartans. Fuck the Spartans. You know, you can root for them. I mean, if you honestly, I've heard another video say this, but like if you fucking like are looking for a side to root for in the movie 300, you know, I think that's really looms large into people's consciousness of what they think the Spartans are, which is deplorable to say the least. But you know, but the Persians are more the good guys from our perspective as Americans and people who have like a representative government and things like that. Like the Persians were a multicultural, you know, society that had multiple stratifications of society in it where people could like move up in it and stuff like that. Like it was a fluid society. Spartan was a very rigid class-based society, you know, that had immovable racial, like, I guess ethnic would be the right term, but like, you know, like distinctions that were based on ethnicity, based on birth, you know. It's like Persia wasn't like that. You know, Persia integrated people that they conquered and they fucking became generals and shit in their own. This fucking, I gotta get this Roomba. Roomba, no, go away. Go away. Sparta was not like that at all. You were born into your situation in Sparta and you either accepted it or you died. You died. It's not good. They were not good people. If you think the Spartans are your guys, I would encourage you to learn to read this book and read the Peloponnesian War, if you can. I mean, you're on Twitch, so what's the likelihood of that? I mean, you know, I've only been here for a week, and I'm pretty sure that, like, if I went to get a CT scan or something like that, they would think I have Alzheimer's due to the holes in my fucking brain. You know, I can only imagine what the hell's going on with you, you know. It's like those like cross sections of what a stegosaurus's head looks like. It's like his head is quite large, but as you can see, his brain is but the size of a little nut. You know, there's hardly anything going on in there. It's mostly just a bunch of fucking hot liquid. Anyway, we're gonna get back to this book, and I'm gonna read a little bit more of it, if you don't mind. I'm gonna go back to this page. I'm sorry. Excuses for why the Argives did not help against the Persians were still important in the later 5th century and beyond. In fact, Herodotus knows well that he is often controversial. For instance, he notes that he is saying something unpopular in declaring that the Athenians, in fact, did most to defeat the Persians. Modern historians would usually accept this opinion, so why was it so unpopular at the time? Presumably, the prevailing view in Greece was that the Spartans were the great heroes of the war, and thus he was challenging that. Even more important, the Athenians were using precisely this boast to justify their empire. The fact that Herodotus admitted his judgment was unpopular was not so much a straightforward sign of, quote, pro-Athenian feelings, unquote, on his part as an acknowledgement that he had to have good reasons, which he does and which he gives at length. For going against the popular view, he may also have been hinting indirectly at some morals or warnings to be drawn from Greek history down to 479 and applied to the period after the wars. At any rate, the histories end their narrative oddly. The last but one paragraph reads, quote, and that was all that happened in the course of the year, quote, end quote. It is as if he was excuse me. Is it as if he's discreetly hinting that many important things were certainly going to occur in the following years? The very last paragraph takes us back to the warning given by Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, in the very early years of the Persian expansion, that if they expand too much and move into rich, luxurious lands, they will become soft and cease to be rulers. In this unexpected flashback, one could simply read a moralizing tale about the rise and decline of Persian might, but Herodotus' audience could also, if they were so minded, see in it a warning about the more recently arisen Athenian Empire. What are the histories? Far more than the history of the Persian Wars, they purport to trace the Greek barbarian hostility back to the earliest mythical times, and they describe the geography of most of the known world at the time. They trace relations between peoples and cities in such a way as to describe much earlier history, and they describe the customs of many of the peoples of the inhabited world. The expansion of the Persian Empire into new areas serves as a peg for the several large sections, often misleadingly called digressions, about the geography and peoples of those areas. The geographical and ethnographical details are often closely linked to the success or failure of those peoples in resisting the Persians. Note particularly Book 4 on the Scythians. The section, or Scythians, I say Scythians. Scythians. It's Scythians as far as I'm concerned. The section on Egypt runs to one very substantial book in its own right. Note, though, that the book diversions were a later creation, and the Scythians received the second longest section. I'm going to say this real quick. I'm going to stop interrupting because I want to finish reading this part. Okay, I'm getting sick. I'm a sick person. All right. And you fucking people want people to fucking do this for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, even 21 hours. My God, fucking, you're making me so pissed off at this idea. I'm fucking smacking my shit all over the fucking room. Fucking raging out because of this fucking idea. You want to fucking die because I'm doing this? Is that what you want? You want Uncle Gameboy to fucking die because he's twitching so much that he fucking passes out? I'm not going to do it for you. You're not worth it, all right? You know you're not worth it. So I'm going to get through this. I'm going to stop making digressions. But the one other digression I was going to make is just this. The Scythians. They were scary guys. They were scary fucking guys. They like to use human skin to make shit out of. That was one of their things they were known for. It's the Scythians, yeah, they make shit out of human skin, like fucking Ed Gein. It's like a fucking tribe of Ed Geins. It's fucking nuts. Anyway, the section on Egypt runs into one very substantial book in its own right. Note, though, that the book diversion and the Scythians received the second largest section. Ethiopians, Libyans, and Thracians are described in detail. It might be tempting to see this in terms of modern disciplines and in some sort of hierarchy. He is an anthropologist, a historian, or a geographer. Is the geography subservient to the history, or as the great early 20th century German scholar Jacobi argued, did he start out as a geographer and only become a historian later in life? But there are large problems with these ideas. The most pressing one being that they impose modern conceptions of modern disciplines on a writer writing at the beginning before history has even been defined or separated from anything else. I was wondering that too. I'm like, how can he think of himself as a historian? It's like he's like the first guy, you know? It's like saying did Christ view himself in the light of a Christian? It's like he was the first Christian. It's like he's like the locust point. It's like from his perspective, he was in a Jewish cult. I'm sure. I think that actually the notion that they might be kind of saying something kind of true there, because I think the notion that he was a geographer, which might have been, there's a more practical, immediate reason for that, for fucking warfare and city planning or whatever. I don't know, but I could see how you sort of develop that idea from basic geographer into a more elaborate description of the peoples that are in those places, how they became that way, what they're doing, how they interacted, etc. I could see that being just sort of an embellishment of geography. And he might even say that, I'd imagine maybe he viewed it that way, perhaps, that he was like, I'm a geographer. I'm just really good at it. I'm just way better than you're just on my new shit. But I'm just a geographer, man. But I'm so good at it, you can hardly even fucking understand what I'm fucking doing here. Hold on. Okay. It might be tempting to see this in terms of modern disciplines and in some sort of hierarchy. Is he an anthropologist, a historian, or a geographer? Is the geographer subservient to the history, or, as the great early 20th century German scholar Jacobi argued, did he start out as a geographer and only become a historian later in life? But there are huge problems with these ideas, the most pressing one being that they impose modern conceptions of modern disciplines on a writer writing at the beginning before history has even been defined or separated from anything else as a discipline. Herodotus helped create the concept of the discipline of history in part by stressing and criticizing his sources and accepted traditions. But it was his successor Thucydides, who really solidified, in fact, narrowed the idea of history as a critical study of past events, and only past events, as opposed to ethnography, mythology, or geography. Yeah, I've read both books. I think he's right. Like that. I mean, I'd be honest with you. That's like part of what makes this book more interesting. It's more comprehensive, more like it has more of a narrative value to it than that. Like when I'm reading Thucydides, like the Peloponnesian War, or reading the battles of Alexander by Arrian or something like that. That's much more like, here is a fucking very dry, very technical description of battles that relies on a pretty significant baseline of knowledge of places and peoples and things like that. That's much harder to read and much harder to get through. It's much more boring, in my opinion. I still read it all. I still fucking read it all, okay? But I just didn't like it as much as I like the histories, okay? Anyway, the definition of history as the study of past political and military events is something of an anachronism for Herodotus, who, after all, included so much more of his inquiry. We would be applying a later conception to an earlier achievement, which was conceived in earlier and therefore different times. It also ignores the complex structure of his work and its overall unity. For in the histories, geography, and customs have a large explanatory role in the course of events, and the interweaving of geography, ethnography, and the narrative of events is very finely done, not as one might expect if one or the other area was somehow tacked on later. Besides, wonders and achievements are worthy of relation/telling, in Herodotus' phrase, in their own right. Egypt was worthy of a longer description because it had more marvels than any other place. Wonders were simply part of his subject matter. Herodotus' own conception of his work is that it is a history, Historie, with a fucking dash over it, whatever that's called, a Greek word for inquiry, which through Herodotus' use has become our word for history. Not only did it not yet mean quote-unquote history, but in the second half of the 5th century, history, the Greek word for inquiry, seems to have had particular connotations, as I hope I have shown in my book. It was a term of science, quote-unquote, in the sense that it was accompanied concern for proof and respect for evidence, though hardly to the degree expected of modern science. We encounter the term inquiry into nature for natural science, or inquiry into medicine for the attempt to understand medicine in its relation to human nature. History was an all-encompassing term that was by no means limited to research into the past. Indeed, Herodotus may have been the first to use it for research that included past human actions. Its appearance in his opening sentence was surely meant to sign to his audience that here was no rehash of old myths, no mere uncritical retelling of stories, but a modern work of critical inquiry. The opening paragraph of the proem sets out clearly that his subject was wide-ranging. I give a very literal translation, he says. This is the translation. This is the publication or display apodexis of the inquiry of Herodotus of Halicarnassus, which he presents in the hope that the achievements of men should not be obliterated by time, nor that the great and wonderful deeds of both Greeks and barbarians should be without their due fame, and also for what reason they fought each other. The proem itself then states that his subjects in the events and achievements of mankind, and that included both Greeks and barbarians. The final clause is similarly wide open. For what reason or cause? How did he conceive of causation? The causes of the conflict would be sought in mythical origins, in the buildup of antagonism in earlier history, or geographical layout and proximity, in way of life customs, and overall attitudes. For instance, the conflicting values of Greeks and non-Greeks, which are certainly visible in the histories. I thought that continued. The political and social strengths of different peoples changed too, and in the course of the histories. Sorry, I'm getting a little cross-eyed. I'm almost done with the part I read. I can read well, I just can't read well for long. And I'm typically not reading out loud, you know. And as I stated before, I'm in like indeterminately poor health. Okay, I'm trying to read this with a fucking swollen tongue. Okay, for reasons I don't even know. Okay, you know. So fucking just cut me some slack. Okay. Anyway. The political and social strengths of different peoples changed too, and in the course of the histories, so that Greeks were not always free and non Greeks were worthy of investigation in their own right. His proem, therefore, describes the idea of his work in terms which would virtually encompass everything which actually appears in the histories. Of course, writers are at liberty to do more or less than they promised at the start, but it is striking how wide open Herodotus's themes are from the start. It is interesting to compare the way Thucydides opened his history with a far more focused summary, surely with an eye on his predecessor Herodotus, and this is the opening. Thucydides the Athenian wrote the history of the war between the Peloponnesians and the Athenians, beginning in the moment it broke out and believing that it would be a great war and more worthy of relation than any that had preceded it. Instantly, it is obvious that this is to be a more concentrated, sharply focused account of a war, one war, and not the wider inquiry or baggy, all-encompassing account of everything that deserves to have its fame preserved. And he claims that his war was greater than the earlier ones, which includes both the Trojan War, sung by Homer, and the Persian War. Rivalry with Homer and Herodotus is emphatically signaled. Turning back from Thucydides to Herodotus, we are struck by the wide-arching aims of the Herodotean proem. This was indeed going to. This will have to do. I know it's Italy, but it's fine. It's fine. I don't care. Thus, turning back from Thucydides to Herodotus, we are struck by the wide-arching aims of the Herodotean proem that this was indeed going to encompass far more than the narrative of the Persian Wars alone. Here, it may be useful to say something about the structure of the histories, which is related to their all-encompassing inclusive subject matter. As we saw above, the large sections of the geography and customs of various peoples tend to be pegged into the larger narrative framework of conquest. When the Persians, or before them on a lesser scale, the Lydians, tried to conquer a people, I think the Lydians were you've heard of Croesus, like Rich's Croesus? I think he was a Lydian. They were a rich people. When the Persians or before them on a lesser scale, the Lydians try to conquer a people, these people are described. Thus, the history of the Medes, who conquered the Persians, but were later subjected by them, subjected by them, is included in the description of their relations with the Persians. Right at the start of the histories, the grand theme of the conflict between Greeks and non-Greeks is launched, and the structure reflects this. We start immediately after the proem with a curious set of opening myths, contrary stories by learned Persians, Greeks, and Phoenicians about mythical abductions of various women by Persians, Phoenicians, or Greeks. The tit-for-tat wrongs and retaliations is thus traced right back to mythical times, but however we interpret this opening, probably a parody of a certain type of argument about causes of wars, Herodotus pulls the inquiry back into safer ground almost immediately, into a period more susceptible to historical inquiry, by saying that he is not going to declare whether any of these mythical abductions happened in this way, but he is going to proceed with the man he knows was the first to commit unjust acts against the Greeks. This marks a clear division between what he knows and the unstable and unreliable tales of a more distant past. Then he proceeds to tell of Croesus of Lydia, my favorite character in this story. I love Croesus. Who attacked the Greeks of Asia Minor in the mid-6th century. This is the period safely within the range of historical knowledge. From now on, in Book 1, the narrative thread follows Croesus' rise and fall as king of Lydia, the rise of the Median kingdom, and then that of the Persian Empire, the Persian conquest of Lydia and other territories, and the gradual escalation of hostility between Persia and the Greek world. It is, however, the numerous flashbacks, frequently called digressions, within this narrative that the modern reader often finds hard to follow. Attached to this main narrative are many inserted sections which explain circumstances, describe the relevant geography, trace how such a situation has arisen, or describe the state of a city which now becomes involved in the main narrative. A simple example occurs in the narrative of Croesus' expansionist plans. Croesus, king of Lydia, first inquires about possible allies as part of his plan to go to war. This inquiry forms a peg for a description of the major Greek ethnic groups, the Dorians and the Ionians. Then, as Croesus learned that the Athenians inhabitants of the foremost city of the Ionians were ruled at this time by the tyrant Pisistratos, son of Hippocrates. I don't think that's Hippocrates, the guy who's like the father of medicine. I think that's a different Hippocrates. We are given an account of the mid-6th century factional strife in Athens and Pisistratos' 3 periods of power. We thus have an explanation within another explanation, a description hanging from another description, all of which are in fact important to our understanding of the train of events. It says, and this information is also vital to our understanding of later events, which Herodotus describes subsequently, when the Athenians drive out the last Pisistratid tyrant and form a new rudimentary democratic government from which they draw the strength and will to resist the Persians. All right, sometimes going to these annotations, it's kind of hard to get back to where you were. Come on, where are you? There we go. Okay. In a form of ring composition, Herodotus returns neatly at the end of this to his main narrative and clearly signals the end of the section on Athenians with the sentence, such, Croesus learned, was the condition of the Athenians. The ring is complete, and the ancient reader would be alerted to this by the very method of ring composition. The modern terms digression or excursus simply... the modern terms digression and The modern terms digression and excursus imply that these passages are less important, possibly off the point, getting off the main theme, but this is to impose modern conceptions of linear structure and relevance on an anachronistically negative slant. The nearest Herodotus gets to describing this principle is in Book 4. Quote, my account goes searching for the start of extra material. The word addition, or literally additions, the word additions carries a more positive charge than digression, and in this excuse for moving from the effects of the coal on cattle in Scythia to a different but equally odd fact about the impossibility of breeding mules in Elis. The searching for extra information is part and parcel of the wide open nature of this inquiry. Yeah, that that's all I kind of want to do for now. I'm going to see how this went with a stable internet connection and do the Uncle Gameboy show later, probably. I don't see why not. All right, bye.